Hello and welcome to the 11th video in this beginner series programming a tile puzzle game on the iPad using Cocos 2D on iOS. So in this video we're going to be looking at touches and receiving touches on the screen. Before we do that, I've made some cosmetic changes to the code. They don't make any difference to the way it runs, but I've renamed a couple of constants here to bottom left rather than top left because the points are on the bottom left. And I've put some spaces and things into the code. If you've been typing this out and following the videos, you've probably done this anyway, but I have a rather nasty habit of squashing things up because I prefer it that way, but most people like lots of spaces in, so I've put some spaces in to try and make things a little bit easier to read. I've also moved the self print board below the board OC 24 equals empty. Good, so touches. On the Cocos 2D wiki, in the section about tips for touch delegates, there's a really good, simple, concise description of how you go about receiving touches on your layer. And the method to do it is actually really simple. You just have to do two things. One is enable touches using this line on your layer. The second is you have to call this function, which is then to register with the touch dispatcher, which means you register yourself as a targeted delegate for touches. And once you've done this, you have to call this, which is touches began. And once you've called touches began, then you've got some other optional functions that are called once you're dealing with a touch through touches began. And if you want to do something with a touch, then you return a yes. If you don't, then you return a no. So in our application, we'll be using the touch began and we'll be using the touched moved to detect the finger going down on the screen and then moving, so i.e. a drag on the screen, because we'll be dragging the tiles later on. So let's get started with that then. So the first thing we need to do is go down below this print board here and just do self is touch enabled and then put yes. That's the first part done. And the next part is we need to put in this code that we saw on the website for registering with touch dispatcher like this, which I'll just paste in. And now we're actually good to go and able to receive touches. We just need to, as we're obligated, override the touch began event. And the interesting thing about this function is it has as an argument here a touch, and inside this touch are the coordinates in pixels where the touch occurred. Now of course I explained in a previous video that Cocos 2D rather handily works in points instead of pixels, so that we don't need to worry about different resolutions. Well, Cocos 2D also provides a method for us to take in a touch and return that as a point, a CG point, in these points rather than pixels coordinates on the screen. And that method is called convert touch to node space, and it works simply as so. So now we have our touch location in points on our screen rather than in the pixels. So it's the same irrelevant of the resolution. And now I just want to print to the screen with nslog here that should say touch began, the location of where the touch began. And then we'll return a yes here to say that we want to deal with this touch. So once the finger's gone down, then it might actually start moving. So what we need to do then is we need to put in the touch moved function, which if we've returned yes from the touch began, and we said we want to deal with a touch, when the finger then moves, the touch move function will be called. And inside here, there's no return because it's a void. We'll actually put exactly the same code as we have in the touch began, and I'll just change this text here. And now I'll save this file. And that's all we need to do now to detect the user on the simulator with the mouse or in real life with a finger touching the screen and then moving their finger. So I'll go up to the top left of the screen and press run to run the application. And now in the simulator, just move that along. If I now press with the mouse on the screen, you can see we got touches began and the touch location. If I press here, you can see touch began and the touch location. Now if I hold and drag, you can see that we're getting lots of touch moved with the touch location on the screen. So we're also detecting a drag, and if I lift up and carry on moving the mouse, we get nothing because the touch has ended. So every time I press down and drag, we get a touch began and then we get the coordinates of where things are moving. So that's all we need to do to detect touches and drags on the screen. So thanks very much for listening. Comments, questions, criticisms welcome as always on YouTube.